Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Big ups IOM and Pirate for putting on what I hope will be an insightful chat. We're going to delve into live streaming, the virtual club space, and all of that good stuff. We've got Tash LC, Raj Chowdhury, and Freddie Masters. So it'd be cool if you guys could introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Freddie.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Freddie. I'm the co-founder of Keep Hush. We're like a hybrid live streaming music community thing. We started a really long time ago, actually, 6 or 7 years ago. Managed to get our hands on a tiny little basement in Soho where we could start inviting people in, and Tash was there. Tash was there. But yeah, in the last few years, we've really honed down what we're about in the music scene. We've introduced a merch service for artists over lockdown, which helped artists to kind of keep things moving while they couldn't tour. But yeah, and then, I don't know, I didn't even explain who I am, really, but yeah, that's basically my whole life, pretty much, so yeah, I guess that works.
You?
My name's Raj. I DJ under the name Raju Rags. I run parties. I do quite a lot of stuff behind the scenes for various music companies, but probably most relevant to this conversation about live streaming is I've been on NTS Radio since it started 10 years ago, and I used to DJ on early Boiler Rooms when it started as well, 11 years ago, and was head of music at Boiler Room for 3 or 4 years. But yeah, do other stuff as well, but I don't want to bore you with that.
My name's Tash, I'm a DJ, I'm a presenter, radio host. I am a presenter for Keep Hush and stuff with Boiler Room as well. I host a weekly radio show on Kiss FM, a specialist show. I play music from the global club, so a lot of African underground electronic music, South American, UK stuff, European stuff, a lot of alternative club, I guess. And what else do I do? I run a record label called Club Yeke, where we put out global club music, so we put out music from South Africa, from Portugal, from Brazil, from Jamaica, next one's from San Francisco in Jamaica, and I do enjoy live streaming. I'm a big fan of Keep Hush, big fan of Boiler Room, and I'm grateful to be part of both of those families. Yeah.
Wicked. So I'm going to start with, it's going to seem really random, this quote, but a guy called Eli Noam once said, let me read this word for word, "Maybe the churches will be emptier, but people's religious lives will actually be enriched about live streaming church services." So I wonder if you think the sentiment rings true for live streaming.
I think at its best, live streaming is a gateway into community, a music community. At its very, very finest, I think, what it does well is create a spectacle and a viewpoint for community. Say, for example, you have a group of DJs or producers or label or crew, and they can't yet sell out fabric or print works. The beauty about a live stream is that you need 50 people on the camera to make it vibey, you know what I mean? And I think the beautiful thing about that is it can be an entry point into different communities and different scenes, which often, and this has happened time and time again with Keep Hush, with Boiler Room, that entry point leads on to them establishing themselves as a, further on in their career, getting bookings and doing it. So, but in relation to the quote you said, I don't think, for me personally, I don't think watching a live stream means I'm not going to go to the club. If anything, it gets me more excited about going to the club. And when I was at Boiler Room, maybe it's just me, but the guy who runs Boiler Room, Blaze, was like, oh yeah, like people have streaming parties in their house and watch Boiler Room, and I was like, really? I've only ever done that once in my life, and that was actually at Tash's house, because we were in lockdown and we couldn't go to the club.
That was sick.
And we watched the filth. But I've never stayed at home and watched a Boiler Room or Keep Hush Shut and be like, yeah, raving. You know what I mean? If anything, it's just like a gateway or a viewpoint into a scene or a record label or crew or community that, if anything, infuses me more to go see them when I do see them playing the club. So, but also, there's a slight caveat to that. Everyone in this room, is in quite a privileged situation because we live in London where we're spoiled for choice with the amount of clubs, with the amount of people that play. And I do know for a fact that people in places where they don't have that access, they do look at live streaming as an entry point into that world. So I don't think live streaming sermons, sorry I didn't understand the whole church metaphor, but for me, I don't think live streaming will ever take away from the club experience or the live experience or the real. If anything, at its finest, it just enhances it and makes you more excited to go to experience it in person.
Do you have anything to add to that, really?
No. No, that was really well put, I think. Yeah, that same. I mean, our mission really with doing the live streams is to if someone's got the potential to break through as an artist, that's what we want to facilitate. So, yeah, as you put it, that's the point of it. And yeah, without doubt, that's the kind of effect sometimes of what we do, not every single time. But yeah, so yeah, it's like a different thing basically. It doesn't detract from the clubbing experience. It helps you to preview, I guess, what the experience will be like, maybe of seeing an artist. Your point about the international side of it, there's people all over the world watching these streams, kind of wishing they were there, and that's something I don't quite fully understand. As someone that lives in London, I don't actually fully know what it's like. We get people commenting, they're like, "Hey, from Russia" or whatever. They're like, "Well, I don't know what this feels like necessarily for you to watch this, and maybe wish you were there." But yeah, I don't know. It's like both of those things. Agreed with Raj, basically.
Yeah, I definitely think that it definitely enhances the clubbing experience. I think it's an incredible thing to be able to have, somebody that's out in wherever being able to tune into the clubbing experience. And even for me, I've watched Boiler Rooms that I don't know if I'll ever get to see those DJs, to be honest, because they don't come to Europe, because they're not in the UK. So being able to have live streaming parties, I think is really cool and really fun. And just being able to have an additional version of the club at home that's pretty much free if you've got a laptop, is just sick, I think. And so I think it just brings people together in the clubbing experience in a whole new way. And I definitely feel, again, privileged to be in London, but even then you don't get to see every artist that you want to see. So to be able to do that through live streaming and to feel like you're included in something, and also to just see people having a sick time, I think it's just a completely different experience to club in. I'm not saying it, I don't think it necessarily beats the club or is even on par with, but I think in terms of opening up the club in a way that we probably didn't have a decade or so ago, or decade plus, is great. It's really cool.
Can I just ask, do you actually, because the only time I've ever done it was at your house, do you have many live stream parties where you just
in my room on my own, maybe, but actually I love live stream parties. I have a massive projector in my house, which is really sick, so it is perfect for live stream parties, but to be honest, we've had a couple parties where we played Boiler Rooms on our wall, and it's really fun, because it just feels like there's a DJ in the room. And it's just a bit different to having a mix, and there's a vibe, and you're watching people have a good time, and you're bouncing off of that energy. So yeah, I have, yes. So it does kind of work.
Fair enough.
What do you think live streams bring to the scene that radio doesn't? I'll start with you, Tash, with the relationship to radio.
That's a good question. I think, I was talking about this earlier with a friend actually, and about the power of radio right now and what it means for people as a means of music discovery. And I don't really, and it's hard to say, as a broadcaster, I do listen to a hell of a lot of radio as well, and I do discover quite a lot, but not as much as I do through probably streaming platforms and DSPs and whatever. And so I think it brings an insight into, as I said earlier, into just new artists, into new scenes that not even new necessarily, but scenes that you weren't aware of. I think it introduces people to new DJs, really, new parties, new promoters, in a way that radio doesn't, because radio, I guess, is more songs, as opposed to entire kind of lineups. And so I think it provides something entirely different. I think that they're both, I think, yeah, radio and, I'm trying to think of the correlation. I think, yeah, radio and streaming is just a very different thing in my opinion. And I think you'd probably find now, if you spoke to a lot of people, that they're more likely to tune into a Boiler Room or a Keep Hush maybe than radio most of the time, like younger people, probably, I would assume. Yeah. What do you reckon?
Well, I would actually much rather listen to radio. It just doesn't like what I'm saying. The very obvious difference between radio and live streams is the visual aspect. And with that, I think the way people watch it and what they're expecting, plus also the DJ performing and the crowd, is different, because when you listen to radio, it isn't always, and you get a lot of mix shows, but there's like an element of hosting. It's not necessarily of like we're playing to the crowd. It's like, you know, sometimes you stop the track, explain, talk about it, and move on to the next one. But when you're watching a live stream, or when I say live stream, I'm kind of thinking of the Keep Hush Boiler Room where there's a crowd, and you're getting insight into basically a club, like a virtual club. So with that, I think the DJ plays differently, because they're playing as much for the crowd and the people in the room, as well as just for themselves. Our radio, I think, is different because they're almost, with a lot of people's radio shows, they play stuff they wouldn't play in the club. So that is a very huge aspect. So kind of like, you know, maybe it's my age, but I only watch a live stream when I want to get pumped, you know what I mean? While when I listen to radio, I might be just cleaning my house, and you know, because I think there's a different way you approach those two, as a DJ, the two different ways you approach it is very different. So I think they'll always be different. And you know, from my experience at Boiler Room, some people don't like that pressure, the pressure of you know, just going into something. Freddie, I don't know, maybe I should mention it, but I played a Keep Hush party a couple of weeks ago. I didn't realise it was being broadcast. I was messing around and free decks stuff. It was like just having a laugh. In the club it was great, but I didn't realise it was being recorded. And then when I was going to be on YouTube, I'm like, I don't want to go on YouTube. Because people analyse it in a certain way, and there's a sort of, with a live stream, there's people watch live stream sets, promoters look at it and be like, how good is this DJ? Let's check out that transition and stuff. So with that, there is you know, a certain pressure to it. An example, Boiler Room, we tried so hard to get Jeff Mills, for example. And Jeff Mills is an incredible DJ. To be honest, some of the old DVDs he did, where he did free deck stuff and he did 909 stuff, is incredible and led the way for what Boiler Room and Keep Hush and all of these things used to be. Never did one, probably because there's a need to, he's Jeff Mills. But he did loads of NTSs, because it's a different approach, you know, and there's kind of a freedom with radio, which I love as a radio thing, and with a live stream, there is a sort of like, it's kind of an insight. It's like a CV, it's like an online CV as a DJ. Like, how good is your mixing skills? How good do you work the crowd? And obviously the big thing with live streaming that changed in the last couple of years is lockdown live streams, where people were just doing it on a solo tip, which almost like reached a midway point between the sort of freedom of radio and the sort of like, here's my CV and my DJ skills on camera and stuff. So, but yeah, to answer, I think there'll always be a big difference between radio and live stream, because of the way the DJ approaches it and the way what the spectator or listener is expecting when they approach those two different formats.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, last night I did...
Sorry,
no worries. Sorry about that confusion once again. It's totally cool. Last night we did, Keep Hush did a panel talk with Emerald and Peach, who were like radio, they both forged their careers through radio, and it was really interesting hearing them about the craft that goes into their radio show. And it just like solidifies the huge difference basically between the formats. Like they're not, like, we like to compare them, and it's like fun to talk about them in the same space, but they're completely different. As you said, like the live stream video DJ set with a crowd is like a showcase of you as a DJ. Like promoters around the world are going to check it out and be like, what is this DJ like? And then the radio show is like, there's so many different ways of approaching it. There's like, you know, Emma was talking about how she did the breakfast show and how she did the like drive time show, and now she does her like club show, as she calls it, and her approach to each one is like completely different. It's all about the like connections with all the producers she's playing, and like, yeah, just way different formats basically.
Yeah, so over the last 18 months or so, we've seen some like amazing initiatives to practice inclusivity, I think, in the scene. I wonder if you guys think the barrier to entry for marginalised groups into live stream is lower, or do the same hurdles exist, or is the scene just changing universally? I suppose we'll start with Tash.
The marginalised entry, I guess it's more maybe to do with financial backing, maybe with like starting up something more than anything else. If you were to try and start up a business, I guess there's always that sort of, you know, the marginalised kind of issues and difficulties that people come up across. But I think in terms of the barrier to entry, I would say it's kind of, I'm trying to think of examples. I feel like it's kind of like a similar, you know, playing field. I think in terms of like inclusivity, say, of live streaming, that's why I've got so much love for Keep Hush, and I've been with them for such a long time because I've seen their growth, and also they are genuinely inclusive. I think with Keep Hush, they not only, you know, now they put themselves up to a point where they've got like quite established artists and DJs on a regular basis, but also they've always been very open format and very just like open doors to like newer people just starting out, and more like kind of like bedroom DJs, and there's always that space there in a way that I think people were quite intimidated, because, you know, people typically compare the two, Boiler Room, Keep Hush, whatever, but in a way that with Boiler Room, I think that door feels and generally does feel a lot more closed off. So I think in terms of inclusivity and openness, Keep Hush have done a really amazing job at that, and I think that's a lot to do with like youth focus and young people who haven't necessarily found a way to find an involvement or a space within DJing, or don't know kind of like where to begin, and they've really like provided that, which has been great to see. So yeah, I think that they've really changed for me, for what I've seen, that entry point into live streaming and just like into DJing in general and into finding community. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, that's nice. Yeah, I think, yeah, I just want to kind of expand on that, and that like we, like inclusivity is like a goal of ours, but the way that we found that we can like navigate it is to just like trust artists first and foremost to like curate for us. So like it'd be really weird if me and Fred just like sat like in the office like trying to curate like what would we do. Like we are out and about listening to music, but the people that really understand what artists are coming through are other artists, because often they're the ones doing like a radio show every single week, or like they're in a network online and offline of other producers and other DJs. So that we trust in them to do that quite a lot, and that brings us, it just opens like the doors so much. We get to discover artists all the time. Like we're not like some expert curators that like understand every single artist in the music scene. We just like know who to trust to bring that to us. And then yeah, the other side of that is yeah, just like constant outreach. Like we're, as often as we can, we try and like just tell everyone to send us mixes, and we'll literally spend like, I don't know, like literally several days listening to like hundreds of mixes, and then after that you're just like, oh my god, there's so many DJs now.
I think, you know, live stream do definitely, kind of going back to my first point, the beauty of a live stream is that you don't necessarily need to have a huge audience and be able to sell out a huge venue. That kind of levels the playing field, and it does mean, you know, for an event-based live stream like Keep Hush, Boiler Room, etc., you just need 50 to 100 people in a room. Actually, when I got given a job at Boiler Room, the guy told me it's a promoter's dream because you don't have to worry about ticket sales. You know, actually being a promoter and organising parties, a very stressful thing is, will this person sell out this venue? Actually doing a live stream, you don't really need to worry about that. And because of that, that does mean you have more of an opportunity to showcase smaller groups, marginalised groups, because the level field is is level. And in a way, actually, sometimes very big DJs don't have a vibe, and some people who've never really get to showcase their art, you're like, wow, that's fucking vibey. And just kind of going to a solitary live stream. The beautiful thing about online is there's no geography. So for me, the most important and for me, like, special live stream I was involved in recent times was the Daytimers live stream for the Indian farmer protest, which united a 24-hour stream across multiple countries, India, LA, you know, UK, all uniting for this thing, and some people very well established and others totally unknown, but it was the fact that these people were uniting for a cause and just, you know, South Asians getting together. Also, just shout out to the Daytimers because they're doing incredible work. But I think that's an amazing example of sort of how live stream can unite marginalised groups and be a very powerful force.
100%.
I think Freddie wanted to add something, so.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally fun.
Okay, thanks, Tash. No, sorry, I just want to add to that, but basically, like, I feel like if you start a live stream platform, your mission is probably to, like, showcase artists that aren't being showcased. If you start, like, a party or something else, like, you might have different intentions. You might just want to, like, throw a banging party, and you might want to be the DJ. Like, so a lot of people start parties because they want to DJ at parties. So it's like a whole, yeah, exactly. But it's like a whole different, like, mission basically from the outset. So it'd be weird if you started a live stream platform and weren't, like, trying to be diverse about your creation. That would be, it just doesn't make any sense, I don't think. So yeah, like, kind of different goals. Not saying, like, event promoters can't be diverse with their curation, obviously, but yeah, it's a different mission from the outset in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up now the age-old debate of capitalism's relationship with underground culture, and I wanted to get your opinions on brands' relationships with live streams, because obviously there's only a few viable revenue models for live streaming. So I just wanted to know your opinions on brands being involved in live streaming. Does it take anything away from the experience, or, you know, is it just a necessity? Freddie first.
Yeah, it's not a necessity, basically. We thought it was for quite a long time. We thought that the only way that Keep Hush was going to make money, and when I say make money, I mean, like, pay a team to do it at the outset, would be to work with brands. But in lockdown, we were like, cool, we're just like a bunch of young people trying to make this work. Like, when we come back, let's do it exactly how we want it. We don't have to, like, be like Boiler Room or be like anyone else that has that kind of weird model of everything is free, everything is like a media thing, except for when you work with brands and then you get to pay people. So when we came back, we were like, let's just charge tickets and let's pay the artists. And what we found is that people are up for paying, which was so fucking obvious. But what we also found is that we can work with artists and we can work with managers and we can work with agents about it. And so our model is really, like, very simple, basically. We have, like, a set bunch of costs to running a live stream that are, like, paying the camera team. Like, the venue might cost money, it might not cost money in some cases. And that amount is, like, everyone understands what that is going into it, and then all of the other money just goes to the artist, like, split evenly. No matter who's playing, it's split evenly. We were like, oh, this is, like, really risky, like, who knows how this is going to go. And then we literally just, like, made this document and sent it to artists and agents, and they were all like, yeah, cool, this sounds, like, really good. Like, this sounds way better than, I don't know, like, live stream event models that have been forged out in the past. And it was just kind of that simple. Like, it looks quite simple to look back on, but yeah, you don't have to rely on brand money to make it work. We can't always pay an artist their, like, market rate for a huge paid gig that they might get in London, but we can compensate people for their time. We can create amazing content for them. It can be a platform for them. It can work, basically. So, yeah.
You got it? Okay. I put a caveat when I did this talk that if I say anything too controversial, that I could, you know, veto it. So I'm going to try and not say anything controversial. I mean, ultimately, I think that it is very controversial, and when I was at Boiler Room, it was a talking point for a lot of people. I think there's many people who've worked with brands very credibly and done it very well, and I think that integrity kind of comes through when it's done tastefully. And, you know, I think the reality is that some brands and some artists do work with brands, and I think when it's done well and sort of with integrity, it's kind of fine from the consumer and the artist, and I don't think I should say much more.
Raj just got all the juice, always. We're doing like an anonymous mask, that's really different, like V for Vendetta. Yeah, I think with the brand thing, I think, you know, again, taking Boiler Room as the example, I think what can be jarring with it is, I think because they've developed such a sort of reputation for themselves, I think as an artist, to play, you know, a Boiler Room has become a very coveted opportunity. A lot of people really bank on for their careers, and so I think that gives you so much power to get away with so much in terms of like not being paid. It's almost like a gig that people don't even consider getting paid for, or at least something that I didn't even necessarily even think about. I was like, of course I'm going to do it, like, I wouldn't even think twice. And so I think then when you do then bring brands into sort of like a platform like that, you know, you've got to have the continuity of it, otherwise it just becomes very selective, and then I think that's when the problems begin. You know, like for myself with brands in general, it can just be a headache. Like as a presenter, I was recently going to do some work with one, you know, for the same company that was like one brand, and then they were like, oh no, we can't get you to work with us anymore because we're working with another brand next week, and I was like, who cares, I don't work for either of those brands, like this is so jarring. Like, so sort of like the ridiculous silly like monopoly over it, it just gets so like political. But I think obviously yes, financially, and I do believe that some brands genuinely do have really, you know, a quite invested interest in music and in culture and do really cool things and align themselves really well. You know, there's certain brands that I can think of that I really do rate and actually like look to discover like scenes and to discover like playlisting, and that actually like do have their fingers on the pulse, or align themselves like really, really well, and it's paid off for them. But I think fundamentally, yeah, I think that, you know, these brands do have a lot of power when it comes to streaming, and I'm not into the whole pay some artist, don't pay some artist thing, because I just think that can essentially just never be fair, and it's never going to be a model that really works for everyone, and then it's, you know, creates this division within live streaming when we're trying to do the opposite. So yeah, I think it can be very techy.
Generally speaking, do you think that having a track played IRL in a club versus online in a live stream, maybe even radio but more live stream for this talk, enhances the success of the track? Like, which do you think, or if you're producing a track, where would you want to see it heard? On a big live stream or in a club event, people taking videos of it? Start with Raj.
I feel like this is just a sneaky way to plug IOM, right? But I mean, obviously back in the day, getting songs played in the club was very powerful, and you know, club DJs broke records, and I think to an extent that still happens, but usually when it's amplified with the Instagram video and the big crowd reaction and IOM and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, like it goes without saying now that we've got an internet generation of consumers, so that stuff is always going to be amplified online. So even if it does have a big impact with a club DJ, it's probably going to be amplified online. So, you know, probably even if IRL, it's going to be URL that amplifies it.
Nice. So many bars. Yeah, I think that like, yeah, because I mean, I guess like in clubs, in concerts, in gigs, whatever, everybody's just constantly filming everything anyway. So I think like it's, I think with like live streaming, kind of, I just think everything just feels so like short-lived a lot of the time now with like virality of music anyway, and the way that music goes viral. I think if anything, it's probably more like social, like TikTok. that has more power right now with music than a lot of other platforms. But I think, you know, obviously the wicked thing about with live streaming and a track popping off through there is that, you know, it lives online. It's got like a longer shelf life than maybe just like Instagram or whatever. But yeah, I think that both have got power in their own ways, really. I'm trying to think of the last time I've seen that happen on a live stream. You probably see it more than me because I mean you have loads of key pushes. So.
There's nothing quite like seeing a crowd reaction to a track. You can, if you've been clubbing and understand what that sensation is of being in a club and seeing a track go off, you can feel it a little bit on your Instagram feed or wherever you see it. So yeah, there's nothing quite like it, and it's been a really interesting, I guess, innovation, probably quite accidental innovation, as the best probably are. But yeah, like you can, yeah. If I had to choose, I'd probably choose having my track go off at Gotwood with 1,000 people going, woo, and then 1,000 people commenting, bumping the post saying, what the fuck is this? That would be my choice if I was a producer.
That's IOM reference there as well. Yeah, so I hate to be that person to bring up this buzzword of the year, but where do you think we are in the evolution of live streaming? Do we see VR and the metaverse being a key component anytime soon, or is that new tech going to stay separate? I'm actually going to go back to you first, Fred.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the simple answer. We really feel like Keep Hush is like a live stream platform ostensibly, but the reason we started it was actually to create physical communities of people, and we found that through these live stream events we were creating that almost by accident. So like the way that we started the events, the streams, they were just streams. Like people think we're trying to be Boiler Room, we were trying to be Just Jam. We were like just filming a DJ in a cool way, and like Tash would come down and host, and then 5 more people wanted to come down, and then the next week 5 more people wanted to come down, and like what we'd set out to do, we were then accidentally achieving. We were like, wow, this community is like really into music. It's like Tuesday night in a fucking random basement in Soho, everyone's really into it. So yeah, I think I'm quite skeptical of like new technologies, and I like to let them like settle for a bit, and I don't get super excited about them for a while until I experience the value for myself. That's just me being, I'm Taurus, I'm very stubborn. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't yet experienced, like, had like a online clubbing experience or VR like clubbing experience that anywhere near matched going to a club. Like, because going to a club isn't just about like having amazing sound in your ears and watching a DJ. It's like going to the bar, going to the smoking area, like meeting random people, and nothing has got there yet. And if Zuckerberg's metaverse video has anything to go by, it's still absolutely nowhere near at that point. So yeah, I don't know yet.
In short, no. I think VR's a bit shit. And I think it would potentially take off in gaming. Maybe pornography will follow, but I can't really sing on top of music for a long time.
Said he hopes. God, just personal investment. I don't know, yeah, I tried something recently which was kind of like the clubbing VR thing, and I don't know, I felt really, I don't talk too much shit, but I felt really sick and made me feel really ill and like disorientated, and I was like, oh, there's too much going on. So I said that plus being like drinking or being drunk or whatever, and just like trying to dance. It was a lot. But and also I'm kind of scared, like I want to push back against it because I feel like it's caving in too much to COVID being the future. Do you know what I mean? And like just closing down all the clubs. So I'm like, no, I'm resistant. Like we're not going to give in to virtual reality clubbing, I don't think so. And also kind of like, even like live streaming and partying online is like close enough to that, I think that, that's a step closer to VR anyway, let alone needing to actually just like cut out the real element of clubbing altogether. And I agree with Fred, like there's nothing that can replace that emotion of being out and like, you know, the closeness of being around people and actually partying. And I think, to be honest, you know, again, like with live streaming, I have respect for all of these, you know, other new approaches to enjoying music. And actually, when I spoke to somebody earlier about, you know, Fortnite, the game, and about like the crazy concerts that they have in there, like the Travis Scott thing, and maybe that's a bad reference actually, but like they had like a few like insanely like huge concerts in there, like selling out like millions of users in these games, and it's just like crazy amounts of gamers in there. And it's like, wow, that's kind of like mad, because it can unite, you know, that's kids from like all over the world who probably will never get the chance to go to a concert, really, which is, you know, a great thing if they get to experience even like a snippet of like a VR version of their favourite artist.
So Travis got played in Fortnite?
Oh yeah, it was like a huge like gig. It was like millions of users in there, and they've done it with other artists as well. But like, yeah, kids just go in there and just jump around and get really gassed about it. And a lot of those kids that could never afford to go out or wouldn't get the chance to, and they're like, yeah, so that's sick. But I don't want to go partying in a virtual club, really.
Well, yeah, that's it, guys. So thanks so much for joining us and chatting with us about this stuff. Yeah, it's been really cool to have you all here, and it's been very insightful. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, questions.
Oh yeah,
questions. Like, talking about like boiler room being like, we don't need to sell tickets, it's an easy way to bring in people from the stream. How much was like an issue of like knowing that you, in some sort of way, you must have needed like to know that you hit some sort of point for like YouTube views or something?
Okay, so yeah, was there a hurdle in needing to meet targets in terms of YouTube views for Boiler Room? Did that hinder the experience at all?
Yeah, the non-branded shows, there was quite a lot of freedom. Working with brands was when a lot of them would be like, we need to get a DJ who will get X amount of figures and views, because obviously a brand often just want to get the most reach they will for the brand. Boiler Room's model has changed obviously a lot recently. It's just been bought by tastemakers and now is kind of moved more to ticketing rather than just solely relying on brand partnerships, which I did before. I think, you know, I've still got a lot of friends at Boiler Room, and I think there's for all that people say about Boiler Room, I think there's a lot of people in the music team who really love music and really good curators, and I will always kind of stand by them. A lot of them are good friends of mine. And I think they are trying to do the right thing of, often they just do Boiler Room and then the city, and then try and sell it out without necessarily needing a big headliner. But yeah, of course, that's just sort of when you're trying to go for volume with numbers, and there is a demand for it from an external, maybe, you know, tickets being sold or brand wanting X amount of views. There is often pressure to book people who have a bigger reach and stuff. So it's a hard thing to navigate. And I think that's all I should say.
Does anyone else want to comment on?
Yeah. I think to follow on from that as well, I think for me, what I, you know, am more into and what I get more excited about is seeing the streams that have lesser known DJs on anyway, and smaller people. And as I said, the open door thing that, like, you know, you guys implement. And I think I get the big headliner thing, and I know it needs to be done, but for me, those are the those are just like the shows that I get slightly less excited about, because I know why they're happening. But they work. They do work, and they fulfill a need, I think. But like, I just think that there's so much space there and so much scope to just bring through constant sort of avalanche of new names all the time, and like new talent. So like, I want to see those spaces used in that way, but I get that there's got to be a balance. But it kind of feels a bit like, especially just, you know, it's just seeing the same names over and over can get a bit draining sometimes. But yeah, I understand why these platforms have to do that.
I would.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was asking about that.
I would just say that, you know, I think where it becomes really sort of, maybe I'd say beautiful, is when there's a trust, I think, in the brand or the platform. Like the fact that, you know, Boiler Room often just sell out venues without a lineup being announced, or Keep Hush do something and they're just like, keep it, and people just buy it. And, you know, for me, something I wear very proudly on my chest is NTS, and they've started a supporter scheme over lockdown because people trust their curation, people trust their integrity. So I think where it becomes powerful is when the platform, and we've only really talked about 3, Keep Hush, Boiler Room, and I've just mentioned NTS. Really, we've only talked about 2 because of the people on the panel, but there's plenty out there. There's loads of online radio stations, loads of people in the stream. Where I think it becomes a very beautiful thing is where you don't care about the numbers and you just trust that platform. And that is something which takes a long time to build, that relationship between the platform and the audience and the artists. And when that is done well, it is a you know, I don't want to like say anything controversial, but when that is done well, and I think we've done it in many instances, I think Keep Hush have done it, I think NTS, I think, you know, there's just thousands to name, but I think that's when that mass volume, rather than the big headliner, is when it is bigger than just like booking the #1 DJ on, you know, blah 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 list or whatever, or how many followers they have. That's when it becomes, you know, a more powerful thing, for sure.
Yeah, to kind of talk about your question, like specifically about those pressures of people watching online, like they vary so wildly that you become really like numb to it. Like sometimes you'll be there and like, I don't know, like a breakout DJ like Gracie T at the moment will be playing and you're like, oh, there's only 20 people watching, what the fuck is wrong with everyone? Like, what are they doing? And then it's like, oh cool, Alex Perez is playing, there's like thousands of people watching, like, this is great. But you just come a lot more numb to it because it doesn't, like, you can't control it and it's not what you're trying to do anyway. Like, you're trying to bring those artists like through and you want people to be watching, obviously, at the end of the day, but you're not in control of it and you can't freak out about stuff that you're not like in control of or can't influence like too much. But yeah, I hope that answers a little bit of that. It's like a different kind of pressure as well. Like, yeah, running a night and worrying about ticket sales is a real thing too. Like, that's scary.
Any more questions? Yeah?
Yeah, on a similar vein, talking about these platforms, obviously they all have their own way of handling the how things get promoted, the reach. So do you feel that difference between like different platforms? For example, like YouTube, SoundCloud, how they handle the algorithms? Do you feel that you have to handle them differently, or do you just do focus on yourselves kind of thing?
Yeah, so does that change platform to platform, YouTube, SoundCloud? Is there different pressures with different algorithms, etc.? I hope that.
Yeah, it does. It does. We've started streaming on YouTube again, which is how we started. I quite like the discovery algorithm on YouTube. I think a lot of people go to YouTube for music and DJ sets, and we get new people checking us out every time we stream, which is really nice. There's been a drive recently to use things like Mixcloud Live and things like that. But when you're doing that, you're just driving everyone like off what they're already on to that, and that's the like balance of running something like that. You're like, we streamed for years just on our own website with like a completely custom solution, but over lockdown we were like, well, our goal here is to break artists that deserve to be broken because they're really sick. So surely we need to be streaming somewhere where that discovery can happen more easily, and that's why we switched to YouTube. I bet our YouTube algorithm is getting really good. I don't know about you guys, but my homepage is like really freaky right now. Like, I'm like watching some guy like camp in his van or something. I was like, I didn't know I'd like this, but this is amazing. Sorry, a bit of a sidetrack, but yeah.
True.
I think it just goes back to format. You know, people use different platforms and consume differently. Weirdly, I don't even know whether I should admit this, but I don't think I've ever watched any live stream from beginning to end. even when I worked at the boiler room as head of music, even the boiler rooms I curated, because what I do is I put the tab on and then I open another tab and I crack on with emails or whatever, and then I'll do it. And if I do flick through a live stream of a DJ, me being a DJ, I skip to the transitions and see how good those transitions are. But I don't think I've sat, other than Tasha's house, I don't think I've sat and watched a boiler room or Keep Hush from beginning to end. But I think people consume things in different ways. As they go to Mixcloud, it's passive listening, as what do you call it, radio. Same with like radio and same with SoundCloud. It's like you do it and then you crack on with other stuff. I actually kind of passively listen to live streams, but maybe that's just me because you apparently have loads of live stream parties in your house. But me, I don't know. Maybe I'm probably just too busy, so I don't really watch things beginning to end. I flick through it and catch a vibe. But to answer your question, I think you're going to different things like Mixcloud and SoundCloud and whatever it may be, and consuming it differently. So obviously when there's no visual, it's often a more passive approach to the listening, while the visual side, you're definitely being engaged on a visual side, so the way you interact with it is differently. And obviously I do watch the visuals, but I kind of like float in and out of it while cracking on with other stuff, But that's just me. And it's a bit weird that I don't watch live streams right now.
Yes. I don't think it's super weird. I think it's more of an investment, I guess, isn't it? It feels like more of an experience, I guess, when you're watching our live stream versus like listening to a mix or putting on just something that's a bit more sort of passive, or an album. It's a bit more of like it's like akin to kind of being in the club, I guess, depending on what you're listening to, because there's so many different types of live streams. But yeah, I mean, I personally go to different platforms for completely different reasons, and like SoundCloud more mixes or individual tracks, and then YouTube more for like live streams or like maybe random sort of like chill mixes or like YouTube videos about camping or like mukbangs or whatever. But yeah, I use them for different purposes. And generally, like live streams aren't as passive, I would say. It's not the question, but
I would say, and I guess it's probably, because it's a Pirate IOM thing, but the only times I've kind of watched live streams beginning to end the concerts, which is also just an important part of music live streaming, where just organise a live stream at Barbican, and that I will definitely watch the whole 3 hours of that. But but that's like sit down, watch the show, so. And yeah, like the Erica Badu lockdown live streams, I don't know if any of you saw that, but they were just mind-blowing, But yeah, DJ ones, I almost use live streams, again, just to like wet my thirst for like actually in consuming it in the reality, So, and I guess probably the reason I've been to thousands of boiler rooms, and I only really do it almost to get a sort of an insight into the live experience, so that's why I treat it like sort of quite more passively, maybe.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Go.
What bottlenecks do you see for live streams to hold their own against a night out, if any? Will they ever be the same? Is it a case of the sound system, the technology, or will live streams always be secondary to the night out and always be passive listening?
So yeah, will live streams always be secondary to IRL clubbing, or will there ever be a level playing field? We kind of covered it a little bit, but if anyone has anything to add to that.
I basically don't think that I think they're just different, like a lot different basically, in terms of what you even like experience them for. I think that there's a minority of people that actually go out clubbing to like watch a DJ and like consume their set in a really intense way. Whereas if you're like watching a live stream, often that would be the motive for doing it. Like you're like, I'm gonna watch this DJ, like every single track you're going to listen to and appreciate. Sometimes I come back from nights out like, wow, I don't think I recognised a single track last night. It was just like lots of thumping and chatting to people. So yeah, I think they're just completely different in terms of what they're for, basically, like the function they fulfil in our lives. But then your question about bottlenecks, yeah, maybe there is a future where like I guess it's just the matrix at that point where we can like plug into a metaverse and fully experience a night out. Yeah, and I'll probably be down for that at the time, despite what I'm saying now. I'll probably be there. I'll see you there.
This goes back to my point about us living in London, so we're very privileged. So for me, a live stream will never replace the clubbing experience because I'm surrounded by loads of great clubs and things, and you know, I'm sure the same exists for people in Berlin and New York and blah 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 blah. I cannot really truthfully speak about how it is for someone living in some random part of the world where that's their only gateway into that world. So, you know, we're very privileged, we're very lucky. On a very personal level, live streaming for me will never replace the club. But I have seen it with my own eyes. I've travelled around where I've seen it. It's a very important for a lot of people, and I don't think we really understand that, you know, because we're lucky.
Yeah, I second that as well. I agree. As I said before, I think that we are very fortunate, and I'd love to see live streaming enhanced more and more and more to be able to provide something special for those people that can't access the club, you know, and also for us, but more so for those people that maybe aren't as privileged. And yeah, I mean, it would be, you know, remember club quarantine that happened as well during, like, they killed it in lockdown and like really invested in creating like a proper online URL clubbing experience for people, and they like did a great job at their lineups, and they like built up quite a reputation quite quickly, and got like a really decent following and like earned a lot of respect. So they were like a great example of that being able to work. But then I think it's kind of situational, like, you know, if we ended up, I hope not, but if we ended up back in another situation that we have over the past couple of years, I think for then it would be amazing to have something that's even more akin to like a real clubbing experience in that situation. But other than that, yeah, I hope that the live streaming world keeps on developing, because, as we said, it does work for a lot of people, and a lot of people do sort of like dote on it, and it's just cool to have options, I think.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Do you have another one?
So obviously you talk about Keep Rush and with the live streaming, that sort of started as like sort of part of what you were doing. But in the world of like social media and like fast-paced marketing, like for example, I watch live streams and actually made me want to just go to them in real life. Do you think the live streaming will be like a separate thing, or do you think it's going to bleed into like marketing? Like, are other events teams going to maybe start using live streaming to promote, or do you think it's always going to be like a separate thing that you do?
Okay, yeah, so do we think that on a marketing perspective, live streaming content can be used to promote IRL events, or should they be kept separate? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's basically, a lot of people have like tried to combine those things, and running a live stream is like, in the format that it needs to be like be amazing content that people actually want to watch, is quite hard, fortunately, for us, because we kind of spent a long time working out how to do it. A good example is Phonox in Brixton. When they first launched, they were streaming every set, but it was just like pitch black. And like, the music was obviously great, but the DJ was playing a club set to a crowd that you couldn't see, and you couldn't really see the DJ. And it would work as an audio format, maybe, but it didn't really work as a video format. So yeah, you can't get too hybrid with it, I don't think. Like, the live stream event format is actually really like specific in terms of how it works, and how to make it like good for the artists, like as good as you can for the artists in terms of what their aim is at the event, which is to showcase them. That being said, like, yeah, there's other successful cases of it, like festivals can do a better job of that. They can like have a live stream stage or something, and they wouldn't necessarily need Keep Hush or Boiler Room to come and do that for them, even though they probably would. But like, they could maybe do something like that because it's light, and they can build like a specific stage that is like, yeah, is optimized for a live stream environment. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question.
I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but I see live stream clips used all the time for marketing.
Well, people just steal out.
Like, yeah, all the clubs, any club you can name of will put a clip of a Keep Marshall or Boiler Room and just be like, check out this DJ this weekend. So I think it already is happening in huge effect, no?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I definitely see it all the time, so.
Yeah, it's been a funny one. I've always felt sort of uncertain about the sort of like veer into with Keep Harsh Boiler Room into ticketing, but then of course I completely understand that on a financial level it's necessary. But for me, it's sort of, I think when I first started hearing about ticketed live streaming happening, I was sort of like, it was confusing me because I was like, but there aren't these two separate things, and then for me it sort of took away from the point. But as you said something earlier, Freddie, about for example, at the event the other day, Daytimer's Easter Margins event, it was like, thinking about it in the sense of you can have a 6 set and then have that for content later, which is really, really cool, because I mean, I've done some like great sets and then they're just done, they're not recorded, they're forgotten about, so in that sense it does really work. So I think as a means of financing, these platforms, it is like important, but I think that once it becomes like super diluted and every club's doing it and like a low quality level, it's kind of pointless. So I think that's what you guys do amazingly, and provide something like that is a USP, is that you can go and provide, it's like an extra layer on top of, an experience on top of like a set, and it does work. So yeah, I think as long as it's done in like a way that makes sense, it can work quite well. And obviously, you guys need to make some pee. So
Bottom line.
It's kind of like Top of the Pops, basically. Like the setup of Top of the Pops is not the same as a live gig. Like it's designed to showcase the artist in like the best possible way, and that's what a proper live stream. That's the approach you have to have. Like anyway. Sorry, I had to get my Top of the Pops analogy.
We love it. I think that's all we have time for, sadly, so I saw more hands, but thank you everyone for your great questions, and thanks again to you guys for answering them.